I am so glad you are here. It is Divine Saturday in my world. Let's continue our talk about geomancy. Part 2. This book inspired this series, and it's by John Michael Greer if you're interested. It's a great little book on the subject. And I want to talk about how you can cast, one of the standard ways of casting to get your answer. I'm going to show you the format it's laid out in. It's that lovely page right there, that series of blank spots that kind of looks like a shield, because that's what it's called. It's called the shield. And to fill it in, you're going to start by filling it in in the four that are on what is actually the upper right side of the figure by creating the four mothers. So how do you create the four mothers? Well, if you remember, geomancy is sort of like I Ching, except instead of 6 rows of information, you're only going to make 4. So you need to create 4 ones or zeros, or 4 yeses, 4 nos, that kind of thing. You can do this the way I was originally taught, by just concentrating on your issue that you want answers to and doing a random number of dots 4 times while you concentrate on that. Then you count up each of the groups of dots, and that creates one of your figures. You could toss a coin. You could use an app and toss a coin on that. You just need that yes-no pattern to be created so that you have 1 or 2 dots at the top, at the head of the figure, that you have 1 or 2 dots at the shoulders or neck of the figure, that you have 1 or 2 dots in the body of the figure, and then 1 or 2 dots at the feet of the figure. And that's how they're described and referred to, so that you will get a figure that will look something like, and there are other ways of doing this, by the way. I'm just going to start with the lovely shield. Where are those lovely figures? There we go. So, I don't know if you can see the dots, but there's 4 dots in there. They're just being explained. This one's for tuna minor, so it's dot, dot, 2 dots, 2 dots. We'll get into that later, but you need to create 4 of these figures that have 1 or 2 dots in 4 layers. Do that 4 times. Now, the benefit of this really is you can really concentrate on your question. It gives you time to sort of get into a more meditative state. So if there is a divine connection being made, you're creating the space and opportunity for that to happen. You create those 4 figures, you fill them in on your board, and from there you're going to create the 4 daughters. So if the 4 mothers went in these 4 right upper chambers, you're going to reverse the order, and that will create your 4 daughters. So the first mother will become the 4th daughter, and so on. Then you've got to create the nieces or nephews. It's been more modernly called nephews, but really old-fashioned, they would be nieces. How do you create the nieces? Well, that's that second row there, and you're going to do that by taking the 2 figures that are above that part of the row and add the dots together. So let's say you had dot, dot, 2 dots, 2 dots, and dot, dot, 2 dots, 2 dots. Well, dot, dot, that's even. So that's going to be 2 dots again. Dot, dot, even, 2 dots again. So, and so on. 2 plus 2, 4, 2 plus 2, 4. So they're all even. So they're all going to be 2 daughters. And so your first niece will be 2 dots, 2 dots, 2 dots, 2 dots. And then you add the second set, and then you add the third set, and then you add the 4th set until you fill in this whole row. You're going to do it again with the nieces to create the witnesses, and then you're going to do it again with the witnesses to create the judge. So there's enough reworking of the material. You have time to get very meditative about it and really reflect on what you're doing. And you can't necessarily predict. It suspends your own assumptions about things to have to add it up 3 times. And I like that about geomancy. I think that makes it a slightly more accurate, in some ways, method of divination. So this is a fun one. I don't think it gets enough attention, so we'll talk a little bit more about how then to interpret those figures next time. But for now, know that myself and everyone else here at Magus Books in Minneapolis is amazed at your magical self, and of course the tiny little magical things you can do here in social media land. I know you know what they are. We hope to see you here soon, either at the shop in Minneapolis or online at magusbooks.com. And in the meantime, have an amazing week and start noticing those odd and even things in your life. Maybe you'll get a geomantic figure just by observation.